Everyone, welcome to Payroll in Excel 2020. Have you ever wondered when you receive some payments or when you defer some of your income for health insurance or life insurance or maybe an AFLAC plan or a retirement plan, how are those payments calculated? What's taxable? What's not? What's the wage base? All these questions. We're going to talk about that today in this video about Payroll in Excel 2020. Been working on the application and have progressed to make this thing even easier to use. So let's talk about all the things I've added into it over the last few days and how to use the file. So here we are in the employee info sheet. This is where you put information about your employees that's related uh, to their employment with your company. If they filled out an old W-4 from a prior year, you're going to say no, they did not fill out a 2020 W-4. If they did fill out a 2020 W-4, you do not need to put in their allowances for last year. But if they didn't fill out a W-4 for 2020, then you'd answer no to that question. If you answered yes to that question, though, you'll have all this area in purple over here to fill out. Is the box check? These are some questions from the new W-4. These are Alabama allowances, whether or not they're married. Do they have any dependent allowances in Alabama? In Texas, this doesn't matter at all because there's no state tax in Texas, so it doesn't matter for state allowances. So once you've entered in all this information here in your employee info sheet, addresses and everything on the right. Once you've done all that and you've put your unemployment rates for the states that you're in, that you were assigned by the state down here, you're pretty much done on this sheet unless you have any workers' comp you need to deal with. But you'd go over to the daily entry sheet and you'd start entering in information about your employees and any specific day they worked, how many hours they worked, or if they receive tips, you go over here in the tips column, or if they worked certain type of projects, you can put projects over here. And if they get paid by the project, you can choose the project type and it will give you an amount that you pay that person for doing that type of project. A lot of times it's used in businesses that have people go out and do service calls for things like that. Sometimes they'll get a certain amount for doing whatever it is they do. You can put that all in there automatically. So when you have all this daily information in here, you're going to go over to the pay periods record sheet. And that's what this video is really going to be about, is all the different things that go into your paycheck and how they're taxed. So our first employee here, Bulbasaur, a Pokemon character, his hours, his overtime hours, his holiday hours, his vacation hours, they all came over from that daily entry sheet when we typed him in. So all these areas in dark blue, these dark colored background colored cells, you don't have to do anything because you've already brought that information over from the daily entry sheet. You do need to enter in an hourly rate when this thing pops up in red. It's saying that there are hours over here and you don't have an hourly rate for this person. So you do need to put that in every pay period. We're looking at all of Bulbasaur here, but you can look at just one pay period at a time. And that's how often people will use this file when you're doing your paychecks. And you'll see for all your employees here what information you have or what information you need. So did this employee have any bonus or a salary that they're paid during this pay period? Do they have any garnishments, child support, things like that? Come out of here, put them in as a positive number. Do they have any reimbursements, business-specific reimbursements that are allowed for reimbursements? All this stuff goes on to your W-2 at the end of the year, even though it's not taxable. You put that in as a positive number there. Did you run a check and pay this person with a specific check number? You can put that in there. Then we start to get into these payments and different ways that they are handled. So we have 401k, like an retirement percentage. We have employee contribution to health insurance, an employee contribution to a group life insurance plan, and also whether or not the employer contributes to that plan as well. Because if the employer does, then there's another area on the W-2 where you record that information. And then we have things like AFLAC and other insurance solicitors where these amounts are not exempt from tax. They're taxable at all levels, but you still need to record them. As you can see, this exempt up here, all these things are exempt from federal and Social Security, Medicare, or what is called FICA tax. The only one that's a little complicated is the employee deferral of the 401k. whatever percentage you put in here, that's exempt from federal tax, but you're still going to be taxed Social Security and Medicare on that money. So it's still taxable for the basis of FICA. Now, all these things here roll, you can change these percentages and it's going to change the amount that's withhold. If the employer matches, it would be the same amount, or sometimes they do half. You just put that amount in there and you'd have to change that every single pay period. You'd have to record that. A lot of times people want to kind of like paste this all the way down, and you can, but I wouldn't recommend doing that for all periods in the future. You should kind of do it one by one, because you don't want to accidentally leave in something there like a health contribution or something if the employee didn't work that month. You don't want to record things that didn't happen. But all those things that go in there, the way that they translate onto the pay stub here, we take a look at the pay stub for Bulbasaur for, let's say, the first week here. What you end up with is you get to see all your regular hours. Your hours are going to total up. Any of those projects we were talking about over here, if they did any of these project types that they were paid for, those are going to show up, the compensation amount here. Any salary or bonus is going to be here. This is going to create a gross compensation number. And this gross compensation number isn't really a taxable base number. It's just kind of the total of all the amounts of money that came in to that employee. Then you start pulling out things that are not taxable, like the health contribution, like the life contribution, which that stuff is completely exempt and not taxable on federal or FICA. So you subtract these amounts from this, and you end up getting what your Social Security or Medicare wages are, depending on how much money that employee has made throughout the year. Once they reach $137,700, they don't get taxed on the Social Security any further past that amount. So that's why these two numbers can be different. If they make more than $137,700 in a year, Medicare wages will keep going up indefinitely, but your Social Security wages will stop being taxed Social Security. You end up after your 401k withholding, your employee portion, you're left with a federal taxable gross amount. And then we calculate the federal tax on that, calculate your FICA on this number. If Social Security is based on this number, the six, it's 0.062% times this number. You can see it's 132. It's right. Medicare is 1.45% of this number. We have Alabama state tax. Looks like there's no local tax in Alabama. Any AFLEC, any garnishments, any reimbursements. So everything kind of rolls into here, and you can end up getting a track on all of your data. This is what your 941 report looks like. You can change quarter or month or whatever, and it's going to give you all the information over to the right here, all your employees that are active during that time period. We've also got a state report for Alabama here. We also have one for Texas, but Texas doesn't have any state tax, so don't worry about it. But you can choose Alabama and all your state tax is going to change. Then we have this other pivot sheet. Now, the other pivot sheet here is a table where you can browse, and when you refresh this table, you can start to see information about all different types, compensation types, tax withheld. You can browse by employee, by month, by anything, and open all of this up. It's another quick way to kind of look at all the tax information here. And also over to the right, you'll have state withholding for unemployment as well. When you put your unemployment rates in on the first employee info sheet down here, put your unemployment rates in, then it's going to automatically calculate what your unemployment is due for each quarter so that you can file. And the same thing for federal unemployment over there. And your W-2s bring in that information about these codes that we're talking about for employee 401k, specific business reimbursements that are acceptable, cost of employer health care, that's the DED there. And so pretty much that's how it works. But if you ever want to look at a guide and figure out what's taxable for Social Security or taxable for federal purposes or exempt, the publication 15 is the place to go for that. It's going to show you all the different types of payments. Here's the insurance for employees. You can see health insurance, accident and health is exempt pretty much all the way across for income tax, for Social Security, and for federal unemployment. So that's where the accident and health is. You also have those payments for 401ks and stuff. That's here. Elective payments are generally the employer contributions are completely exempt from everything, but the employee contributions to the 401k plan are taxable for unemployment and for federal tax purposes, but they are, I'm sorry, yeah, they're taxable for, sorry, they're taxable for Social Security, Medicare, and federal unemployment. They are not taxable for federal income tax reporting. That's what I'm saying. Generally exempt for federal tax reporting. So you don't pay federal tax on this. But there's a nice good list here, and that's how I add these items into the file is by looking at them and see what type of tax classification they get. And that's how we do this. So happy payrolling, everyone. We're going to keep rolling here. I'm adding the states. We're close to being on schedule to getting all 50 of them done by the end of February here. Done a lot of work to change this file around and make it really dynamic. So if you're interested in one, go to kenbraverman.com and I will set you up with a brand spanking new payroll 2020 file to make your life easier. So we're out.